The most powerful weapon in any conversation isn't a word. It's actually the absence of one.
Right. It's the silence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the Dark Cues channel. Think about, the last time a conversation went just completely dead silent.
Oh, yeah. That
Your
feeling.
heart rate probably spiked, your palms might have started sweating a bit, and you felt this overwhelming, almost primal urge to just say something, literally anything.
Just to fill the air.
Yes, just to feel the dead air. So today, our mission in this deep dive is to deconstruct that exact feeling. We're unpacking the dark psychology of silence.
Which is such a massive topic.
It really is. We want to figure out why the human brain absolutely panics in the void and how you can actually harness that, well, that biological glitch to gain social dominance, negotiate better deals, and scot when someone is lying directly to your face.
It's a really profound shift in how we think about human interaction, honestly.
Yeah.
Because, we spend so much of our lives learning how to communicate better by obsessing over our vocabulary or our phrasing or our tone.
Right, like, what exactly should I say?
Exactly. We're taught that influence is entirely about what we say. But when we look at the underlying mechanics of human psychology, the space between the words is where the real leverage actually lives.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because
Okay.
before we can, weaponize silence against someone else, we really have to understand why it works so powerfully on us in the first place.
Absolutely. You have to start with the biology.
Right, because the core premise here is that human brains are fundamentally neurologically wired to fear social silence. It's not just awkwardness. It feels like a literal perceived threat.
Yeah, to understand the sheer panic of a silent moment, we really have to look back at our evolutionary biology.
Like hunter-gatherer times.
Precisely. For early humans, survival depended entirely on remaining in the good graces of the tribe. If the group just stopped talking to you, if there was this sudden, unexplained void in communication, your brain interpreted that silence as imminent rejection.
Oh, wow. Because rejection back then meant
Rejection from the group meant isolation, and isolation out in the wild basically meant death.
right, you're alone with the saber-toothed tigers.
Exactly. Fast forward to today, and our nervous systems, they haven't really updated their software. When a conversation abruptly halts, your body reacts with a literal physiological response.
It's not just in your head.
No, it's very physical. Your cortisol levels, which is the primary stress hormone, they experience an immediate sharp spike.
So when the room goes quiet, we aren't just feeling a little uncomfortable. We are physically experiencing a stress event. Our body is actually preparing for danger.
Yeah. You know the phrase, nature abhors a vacuum?
Oh, sure.
Well, the human brain absolutely abhors social silence. The brain's immediate priority becomes resolving that cortisol spike at literally any cost.
Just make it stop.
Yes. To relieve that intense burning anxiety, the average person will do almost anything to make the discomfort stop. They'll start talking, they'll ramble, they'll overshare details they never actually intended to make public. And in a business setting, they might spontaneously lower their own asking price. They just surrender their leverage entirely because the internal pressure is just too high.
Yeah, it makes total sense when you put it in a real-world context. Think about, like, being at a crowded party.
Okay, yeah.
There's music playing, everyone is chatting away, and you're mid-sentence, maybe telling a slightly embarrassing story to a group of friends.
We've all been there.
Right. And suddenly, the DJ unplugs the wrong cord, the music abruptly stops, and the whole room goes dead quiet just as you hit the punchline.
Oh, man, that is the worst feeling.
It's awful. And that visceral panic you feel in your chest, right at that second, that's the cortisol hitting your bloodstream. You feel entirely exposed.
That's a great example. What's fascinating here is how predictably we hand over control when we give in to that feeling.
You just completely fold.
We do, and that leads to the golden rule of the social dynamics we are exploring today. It's incredibly simple. The person who controls the silence controls the flow of information.
So if you don't panic when the music stops.
Yes. If you can learn to sit in that discomfort without breaking, you become the one pulling the strings.
Okay, so since we know people will do almost anything to stop that cortisol spike, how do we strategically apply this pressure? Like when money or terms are on the line in a negotiation?
Well, this brings us to a highly specific tactical application known as the negotiation pause.
The negotiation pause. Okay.
Yeah. Let's say you are sitting across from a vendor. They give you an initial offer, or perhaps an excuse as to why they just can't possibly meet your terms.
My instinct is always to jump right in, have a snappy comeback ready.
Right, to counter offer, to justify your position, or just argue. But the negotiation pause dictates that you suppress that instinct entirely. You do absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. You do not respond, you do not nod, you do not even say, hmm. You look the person directly in the eye and you stay completely entirely silent for exactly 4 seconds.
Wait, exactly 4 seconds. That doesn't sound very long on paper, but I'm imagining sitting in a tense boardroom, counting to 4 Mississippi in total silence while staring at someone that feels like an eternity.
It is an eternity in conversation time. It acts as a psychological pressure cooker.
I can imagine.
And the data from the source material on this is staggering. Roughly 80% of people will negotiate against themselves without you uttering a single syllable.
Wow. 80%.
Yeah.
They just fill the void by undercutting their own position.
Exactly. You're just sitting there and suddenly they blurt out, but I can lower the price a bit more, or, well, maybe I can throw in this extra service.
They do the negotiating for you? You haven't even asked for a discount.
You haven't made a counter-argument at all. Their cortisol did all the heavy lifting. The silence forces them to confront the possibility that their offer was deeply offensive or wildly off base.
So they rush to appease you just to end the terrifying evaluation phase. But I do have to push back on the mechanics of this, though.
Sure, go ahead.
If you just sit across a desk from, say, a car salesman and stare in silence for 4 full seconds, couldn't that totally backfire?
How so?
Well, you run the risk of looking clueless, like your brain is buffering, or you literally just forgot your train of thought. How do you hold that silence without looking completely disconnected from reality?
That's the crucial detail. The difference between looking clueless and looking dominant all comes down to where you direct your focus.
Okay.
If you look down at your lap, if you shuffle your papers, or if your eyes dart around the room, you absolutely look confused or intimidated.
Right, you look nervous.
Exactly. The tactic requires steady, unblinking eye contact while holding the silence. It signals that you have heard them perfectly, you've processed their offer, and you are silently weighing their words.
And perhaps finding those words severely lacking.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it goes right back to that evolutionary fear of rejection we talked about. Maintained eye contact during silence is an incredibly intense social signal.
So the eye contact is like the lock on the pressure cooker. Without it, the steam just escapes.
That's a perfect way to put it. It tells the other person's primal brain, I am evaluating your worth to the tribe right now. It is uncomfortable, yes, but undeniably effective.
Here's where it gets really interesting, in my opinion. We've talked about using silence to create external pressure, extracting a better deal or a lower price.
Yes, the negotiation side.
But what happens when that exact same silence is used to amplify someone's internal guilt? Specifically, when you suspect someone is actively hiding something from you.
Oh, lie detection. The transition from negotiation to lie detection relies on those same biological principles, but it exploits a very specific flaw in how the human brain processes deception.
Okay, tell me about this flaw.
Well, the technique is often referred to as the interrogator stare. When someone decides to lie to you, whether it's an employee covering up a massive error or a teenager lying about where they were last night, they undergo a significant amount of cognitive load.
Because lying takes processing power.
Exactly. They have to invent a scenario, ensure it sounds plausible, and remember all the fake details.
They write a script in their head and they rehearse it.
Yes. They rehearse the answers meticulously. They might even practice their tone of voice in the mirror. But the critical flaw is that liars practice their answers. They almost never practice what comes after the answer.
Oh, wow. They don't rehearse for the aftermath?
No, they don't. So if you suspect someone is lying, your move isn't to play the aggressive detective and pepper them with a million rapid-fire questions.
Right, which is what we always see on TV.
Exactly, but that's wrong. Your move is to ask one simple question, let them deliver their carefully rehearsed performance, and then give them absolutely nothing in return.
You just let them finish speaking,
Yeah.
and you do not validate them.
You just look at them silently. You let the silence hang for 4 seconds, or sometimes even longer. This triggers a massive, highly visible divergence in behavior between someone who is telling the truth and someone who is actively deceiving you.
Because the truthful person isn't expecting a reaction, right? If I ask you what you had for breakfast, and you say oatmeal, and I just stare at you, you're just going to think I didn't hear you.
Exactly. A truthful person's reaction to the interrogator's stare is just mild, genuine confusion. They might say, did you hear me? Or, are you okay?
They aren't panicked because they have nothing to hide.
Right. But a liar will be terrified, The liar assumes your silence means their trick failed. They assume you have caught them, and their cortisol spikes dramatically.
Because their rehearsed script has officially ended.
And you haven't given them the validation they desperately need, so they have to start improvising.
And the improvising is where they hang themselves. It's like, imagine a liar's rehearsed answer is a bridge they've built.
Okay, I like this.
They constructed this elaborate bridge specifically to get away from your question and get to the other side safely. They cross the bridge, they deliver the final word of their answer, and they expect you to just nod so they can keep walking.
Right, they expect them.
But when they reach the other side, and you just stand there staring at them in total silence, they panic. They think, oh no, the bridge isn't good enough, they didn't buy it. So they start frantically building random, unnecessary extra bridges in all directions.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. The silence forces them into unscripted construction. And because they are panicking, the architecture of those new bridges is terrible.
Uh-huh, right. It's falling apart.
They will start adding unnecessary details to their story, trying desperately to convince you. I was at the store, and by the way, the line was incredibly long, and there was this guy with a blue hat.
Providing totally unprompted alibis.
Exactly. And the more they talk, the more unscripted details they add, eventually trapping themselves in a web of contradictory facts. By doing absolutely nothing, you force the deception to unravel itself under its own weight.
Okay, but wait. Let's explore a necessary nuance here. What about someone who is just naturally highly anxious?
Good point.
If I ask an anxious, socially awkward person a question and then stare at them, they might start rambling and adding weird details just because they hate the silence, not because they're lying. How do we tell the difference between the panic of a liar and the panic of an awkward truth teller?
This raises an important question about establishing a baseline. You are absolutely right that an anxious person will try to fill the void. The difference lies in the actual content of the rant.
That's it. Okay.
An anxious truth teller will typically ramble about their feelings or just repeat the same true facts in different ways. I was at the store. Yeah, I was just picking up some things. It took a while.
They just babble.
Right. But a liar, under the pressure of silence, will invent new, verifiable facts. They will introduce new characters, new timelines, and new excuses that weren't in the original story. The truth teller babbles, but the liar builds an elaborate, fragile fiction.
That distinction is crucial. You're listening for the invention of new facts, not just the presence of nervous energy.
Oh.
So we've explored the biological dread of silence, the negotiation pause for external leverage, and the interrogator's stare for truth extraction. We're using silence as a tactical reaction to other people.
We are, but there's one more layer.
Right. The final layer of this psychology shifts the focus inward. It's about how our own relationship with silence dictates how the room views our baseline authority.
Yes. We are talking about the concept of the authority anchor. This moves beyond isolated tactics and looks at the sheer pace of our everyday speech.
How fast we talk.
Exactly. How fast we talk fundamentally alters how others perceive our status. If you pay attention to highly powerful people, CEOs, seasoned politicians, top-tier industry experts, you will notice a universal pattern.
They never rush.
They rarely, if ever, rush their words. They use pauses not just to pressure others, but to anchor their own authority in a space.
Because biologically speaking, fast signals anxiety. It tells the room that you don't feel entirely safe or secure in your position.
It signals a subconscious fear of being interrupted. When you rush through your sentences, when you don't leave any gaps between your thoughts, you are communicating a perceived lack of status.
You're essentially telling the listener, I know I don't really command this room, and I expect someone to talk over me at any second, so I have to get all my words out as frantically as possible before I lose the floor.
That's exactly the subconscious message.
Wow. That is a brutal realization for anyone who naturally talks fast. You might think you're just being efficient, but you're actually broadcasting low status.
Conversely, speaking slowly, with deliberate, unhurried pauses, signals absolute confidence. It says, I own this space. No one is going to interrupt me, and if they do, I am entirely unbothered.
It commands respect because it demonstrates a lack of fear.
Furthermore, strategic pausing literally trains the listener's brain to hang on to your every word. When you pause mid-thought, you create a micro cliffhanger.
That's clever.
The human brain naturally leans in to wait for the resolution. You are actively training the audience to wait for your permission to receive the rest of the information.
So what does this all mean for someone like me? I have a practical dilemma here. For those of us who talk fast simply because we are genuinely enthusiastic, we get excited about a topic, the adrenaline hits, and the words just start flying.
Of course.
How do we reconcile that passion with the fact that speed signals a fear of interruption? Do we have to suppress our natural energy and become monotone robots just to seem authoritative?
Not at all. Enthusiasm is engaging, and passion is a phenomenal tool for persuasion. The goal isn't to drain the energy from your voice.
Thank goodness.
The key is understanding the deliberate use of the pause to project confidence within that enthusiasm. It's not necessarily about the speed of the words themselves, it's about the brakes you apply between the thoughts.
Ah, so you could drive fast. You just need to prove to the passengers that you know how to stop without crashing the car.
Exactly that. You can speak with high energy, you can have a fast, clipped cadence when making an exciting point, but you prove your authority by how you stop.
How you brake.
Right. An anxious fast talker runs out of breath, crails off at the end of a sentence, or immediately rushes into the next point to avoid a gap.
They keep speeding.
But a confident, enthusiastic speaker delivers an energetic thought, and then they deliberately pause. They let the energy land.
They sit in the silence for a beat.
Completely comfortable before moving to the next point. It ensures your enthusiasm is perceived as passion rather than panic.
And every time you hit those brakes and comfortably hold that silence, you are quietly reminding the room that you are the one steering the conversation.
It all comes back to that biological baseline we started with.
Right. We're so conditioned to view silence as an absence, as a void that needs to be filled with noise. But it's actually just a different frequency of communication.
Silence is never actually empty. It is entirely full of answers.
I love that.
By stopping the instinctual rush to fill the void, you shift the dynamic of any room. You force others to reveal their true intentions, you let them negotiate against their own interests, and you hand yourself the psychological upper hand, all without uttering a single syllable.
It truly is the ultimate social hack. So for everyone listening, we want to leave you with a final provocative thought to ponder today.
Something to test out in the real world.
Exactly. In your next high-stakes conversation, whether you are asking for a promotion, arguing with a partner, or buying a car, when you feel that intense, burning urge to jump in, to fill the quiet, to prove how smart you are,
Take a breath.
take a breath and ask yourself, is your urge to speak actually a sign of power? Or is it just your cortisol talking?
Phenomenal question to carry forward into every interaction.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope it gave you a completely new toolkit for navigating your daily conversations.
It definitely changes how you see things.
Absolutely. If you found this breakdown valuable, please make sure to subscribe to the Dark Hues channel so you never miss our future explorations into the hidden mechanics of human behavior. See you next time.